$0. That's the number on your banking app. You are sitting in your car outside a CVS on a Tuesday night in 2026. Engine off, phone screen the only light. Checking account, $312.18. Savings account, $0.00. Not low, zero. The account exists. It has a name, a routing number, a 6-year history. It has never once held more than what you put in to open it. You are 35 years old. You did not plan this. Nobody plans this. You planned a career. You planned a 2% raise every January and a 401k you'd look into eventually. You planned to be fine. 35 was supposed to feel like solid ground. Instead, it feels like the moment you finally stopped to check the math, and the math said 0. Go back, 22 years old. You had a degree and a job offer for $42,000 a year, and it felt like wealth after 4 years of ramen and shared bathrooms. First paycheck, you bought a couch. Second paycheck, you bought a flight to see a friend in Chicago. Nobody told you that $42,000 a year, after taxes, in a 1-bedroom apartment with $1,150 rent, leaves you with about $380 a month of room to breathe. And breathing room always gets spent. Your 401k enrollment form sat in a drawer for 14 months. Your employer offered a 3% match. You left it on the table because nobody explained that free money wasn't a phrase, it was a literal description. 25 years old. You switched jobs for a $9,000 raise, which felt like winning something. You cashed out the small 401k balance from your old employer, about $4,100, because moving had a deposit, and your car needed brakes, and the number in your checking account mattered more that month than the number in some account you'd never looked at. Nobody told you the IRS would take 30% of that $4,100 in taxes and penalties before it ever helped you. You learned that the following April, filling out a 1099-R you didn't understand, watching your refund shrink by $1,230. 28 years old. A relationship ended. The lease was in both your names, so you took it a loan for 4 months at $1,650 a month until you could break it. A root canal cost $1,800, and your insurance covered $400 of it. A credit card absorbed the rest at 24.99% APR, because that was the card you'd had the longest and the one with room left. You told yourself you'd pay it down in the spring. Spring came. The balance had grown by $310 in interest before you paid a single dollar of principal. 31 years old. You tried again. You opened a savings account in March, after a slow January where you didn't go out once. You put in $200 a week for 9 weeks. $1,800. You felt something close to pride. Then the transmission went in May, $2,400, and the account went back to 0 in an afternoon, the way water goes back to its own level. You didn't cry about it. You just stopped opening the banking app for a while. That's the part nobody warns you about. Not the setback itself, but how setbacks teach you to stop looking. There was a guy in your graduating class, Marcus. You weren't close, but you knew him the way you know everyone from a 100-person program. Group chats, a few overlapping electives, mutual friends at the wedding circuit. Marcus took a job in 2015, making $46,000, barely more than you. The difference was smaller than you'd think, and that's the part that should bother you. He set his 401k contribution at 8% the week he was hired, captured the full 4% match his company offered, and never touched it. Not when he got laid off in 2016 for 5 months. Not when he financed a used Civic in 2018. He rolled the old 401k into an IRA instead of cashing it. 1 phone call, 20 minutes, no taxes paid. By 2019, at 28, his retirement accounts held $61,000. Not because he earned more than you, because he never let the number go back to 0. By 2023, at 32, it was $142,000, helped along by a market that had a brutal 2022 and a strong recovery in 2023. The kind of swing that wrecks people who panic sell and rewards people who don't check the balance during the dip. Marcus isn't rich. He drives the same Civic. He just has a number behind him that compounds whether he's paying attention to it or not. You have a number that started at 0 7 different times and went back to 0 7 different times. That's the actual lesson. And it has nothing to do with discipline or self-control or any of the words people use to make this about character. It's about interruption. Every time the balance hits 0, the clock reset. Compounding doesn't care how hard you tried in March if October erased it. It only cares about what's left standing at the end of the year, every year, uninterrupted. So here you are, 35, 2026, $0 in savings, And the number that should worry you more is the one nobody puts on a billboard. The average 401k balance for someone your age sits somewhere around $80,000 to $120,000, depending on whose data you trust. And you have $0 in retirement accounts too, because the one you had, you cashed out at 25. Your W-2 last year said $61,400. Your FICO score is 668. Fine, not good. You're carrying $7,400 in credit card debt across two cards, one at 24.99%, one at 27.49%. Rent on your one bedroom this year is $1,890 a month because rent in 2026 doesn't care what year you decided to start over. A 30-year mortgage right now runs about 6.5%, and the median home price nationally just crossed $430,000, which means even if you wanted to buy something modest, the monthly principal and interest alone would run close to $2,150 before taxes and insurance. You are not behind because you're lazy. You're behind because every fire you put out cost you the only thing that actually builds wealth, which is time left uninterrupted. Here is what 35 with zero actually means, stripped of the parts that are supposed to make you feel something. You have 30 years until 65. That is not a small number. That is enough time at a historical average market return of around 7% a year for $500 a month, untouched, automated, boring, to become roughly $567,000 by the time you're 65. Not because $500 is a magic number, because 30 years is. The same $500 a month started at 22 instead of 35 becomes closer to $1.3 million by 65. Same effort, same paycheck-sized sacrifice. The only variable that changed is the one you can't get back, the 13 years you spent restarting from zero. So the question at 35 isn't whether you missed the window. You didn't. The question is whether you're willing to stop being a person who restarts and become a person who simply continues, even when continuing feels small and slow and invisible for years. That's the part nobody films. There's no moment where the app buzzes and your life looks different. There's a Tuesday in 2026 where you set up an automatic transfer of $200 to a high-yield savings account paying around 4%. And another Tuesday where you bump your 401k contribution from 0% to whatever percentage captures your full employer match. Because turning down a match in 2026 is still the same as turning down a raise. There's a Roth IRA you open in 9 minutes on your phone. Contribute $7,500 to over the year if you can manage $625 a month, because that's this year's full limit, and every dollar in it grows tax-free for the next 30 years, untouched by whatever the market does on any given Tuesday. There's the debt sitting at $7,400 that you stop paying the minimum on and start attacking with anything extra. Highest interest rate first, the 27.49% card, before the 24.99% one, because interest at that rate is not a bill. It's a leak, and you cannot save your way past a leak that size. At $400 a month against that balance, it's gone in about 22 months instead of the 11 years the minimum payment would have taken you, the 11 years and $9,200 in interest the bank was quietly counting on. 38 years old, 2029. If you held the line, match captured, Roth funded, debt gone by year 2, your retirement accounts cross roughly $34,000. It doesn't look like anything yet. It looks like a number you could lose in an afternoon, the way $1,800 disappeared at 31. But it isn't the same anymore, because this time it's automatic. It's not sitting in a checking account waiting for a transmission to find it. 42 years old, 2033. The accounts cross $98,000. Somewhere in there, you got a raise to $74,000. You didn't increase your spending by the full amount. You increased your 401k contribution by 2 percentage points instead. Nobody noticed. Your lifestyle looked identical from the outside. The only thing that changed was the one column nobody else can see. 45 years old, 2036, $156,000. This is roughly the age your own father might have been when you assumed, as a kid, that he had it figured out. He probably didn't either. Most people don't. They just stop telling their kids the balance. 50 years old, 2041, $264,000. And this is the age where the IRS lets you start adding catch-up contributions on top of the standard limit. An acknowledgement built into the tax code itself that almost everyone arrives here later than they meant to. 55 years old, 2046, $412,000. 10 years out from 65 now, and the number is no longer something you check anxiously. It's something that exists whether you look at it or not, the way Marcus's did at 32. 65 years old, 2056, something north of $620,000, built off a starting balance of exactly zero at exactly 35 in exactly 2026. Not because the strategy was clever, because it wasn't interrupted. That's the entire difference between you at 22 and you at 35 and you at 65. Not intelligence, not income, continuity. You will still have bad months after this. A car will still break down. A root canal will still happen at the worst possible time. The difference this time is that the emergency fund you build first, 3 months of expenses, roughly $5,700 to $6,800, depending on what your rent does between now and then, exists specifically so the next crisis doesn't reach into the account that's supposed to never be touched again. You separate the two pools on purpose, one for chaos, one for continuity. The chaos fund gets refilled. The continuity fund never sees a withdrawal again. Not at 40, not at 50, not when the market drops 20% in a bad quarter and every notification on your phone is telling you to do something. The only wrong move in a downturn is touching the account. Marcus didn't touch his in 2022. That's the whole secret. And it isn't a secret. It's just unglamorous enough that nobody puts it on a billboard. You are 35. You are sitting in a parking lot. The balance says $0 and 0 cents. And in a few years, that number will be a sentence you tell people the way you describe a place you used to live. True, a little distant, no longer where you are. The number that matters isn't the one on the screen tonight. It's the one 30 years from now, and it's already being decided by what you do with the next Tuesday, and the one after that, and the one after that, for as long as you don't stop. $0. It always starts there. It always will.